The party, it was cool. It's good.
So it was a successful party, eh?
So therefore, a successful party conditions.
No one got drunk. No one got drunk. No one got smashed.
Yeah. I think I'd die shocked if I went to one of those parties again. I was just thinking, I'm down to go to a funeral. I think last time we went to a funeral like that, well, no, it wasn't like that, it was civilized, but there was a whole row of us from VI and Sydney. And we just all left together. I think it's time to go now.
All right, shall we start with the Heart Sutra?
Why not?
Upper straight to the Arya Triple Gem. That's it here at one time. The Bhagavan was done. Together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in concentration and gathering knowledge and perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara stood upon the very practice of the prime perfection with and beheld both five gates also until then through the power of the Buddha Dvandashaya, said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. Son of the lineage trainer wishes to practice the activity of the fine perfection of wisdom. He said that in the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra and the son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage wishes to practice the fine perfection of wisdom should look upon like this correctly, beholding the five gates also as empty of inherent nature. Emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than empty. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition, factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, emptiness without God, unborn, unceaseless, not without states, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, there is no form. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touching, no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on, up to including no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction for ignorance, no, including no aging and death, and no extinction for aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no attainment, no non-attainment. Therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on the wild perfection for wisdom, the mind without obscuration, without fear, having completely passed without error, to reach the end point of Nirvana. All Buddhism divine 3 times to the unsurpassable perfect complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of the prayer of knowledge, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as a truth and is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Dada Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisattva Shariputra Sapama Sapachutra find perfection of wisdom like that. One of those in that concentration commended Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. Well said, son of me, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the perfection of wisdom, which is indicate, even that the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas were overjoyed and highly praised, as spoken by the Bhagavan. To Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly, from the accumulations I collect from listening to the teachings, may I attain the state of a Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. and go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest. And the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings of the it also can be until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. May I become a Buddha. All right, so we'll start with a question. Someone sent me a question by mail. It says, since only one moment of anger can destroy so much accumulation of virtue and even of merit, it seems so difficult for an ordinary being to make progress without going perpetually backwards. Are the four opponent powers enough to overcome such a heavy momentum? So, indeed, the first verse of chapter number 6 says that one moment of anger destroys the accumulations that we gathered over thousands of eons, and in Chandrakirti's text it says over hundreds of eons. So when these two cases are being discussed, I think that we have said before, these are cases of getting angry at bodhisattvas. Not only that, also there is an explanation that says that when the person that is getting angry is a bodhisattva. So let's say that when a lower bodhisattva is getting angry at a higher bodhisattva, such and such accumulation is being destroyed. So there is much discussion about the difference between, why Shantideva says 1,000 eons worth of accumulation of merit and accumulations in general. And then Chandrakirti says in his supplement, hundreds eons of accumulations. And
it's not accumulations in general, but it's not the accumulation of wisdom.
Yeah. So first of all, it is not, so Chuki pointed out that that's not just the accumulations in general, because it excludes the accumulation of wisdom, which is spot on. So first of all, it refers only to the accumulation of merit, in that virtues that you have created that contribute to the accumulation of wisdom are not destroyed. So first off, we get angry with each other. We have kind of small moments of anger, irritation, and so forth. And we have great moments when we lash out at each other. Now, it is indeed the case that if all of these moments were moments in which every instant of anger would eliminate accumulations of virtue that has been accumulated over thousands or hundreds of years, we would have had no chance. I mean, how many times have we gotten angry in this life? I mean, I get angry probably on a daily basis. I mean, it doesn't have to be like, don't have to be livid, I don't have to be enraged, but no. We do get angry at different things, don't we?
But I think when we were discussing this, it was about that manifest anger, because we were talking about that.
Well, so it seems like it has to be, manifest anger, which means that you need to get angry, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's not just to feel uncomfortable. You need to be angry. You can angry and you can also be livid. There are different intensities of anger. Anger and wrath, where when the object of your anger is nearby, you want to strike it, beat it, and so forth. We have different intensities of anger. And also the object of anger is different. So if you get angry at a bodhisattva, it's really heavy. If you get angry also, I would say that in general, at your spiritual teachers, highly realized beings and so forth, it would be heavy negativities. If you get angry at your parents, that'll also be heavy negativity. So not all moments of anger destroy accumulation of virtue that was accumulated over such a long time. There are specific ones, but needless to say that when we get angry with others, even if the object of our anger is not a bodhisattva. It's still, we still destroy probably some accumulation of merit and we accumulate negativities, but they can still be purified with the 4 powers of the antidotes. Then in Chandrakirti's, as far as I remember, in Chandrakirti's commentary, when he discusses those, in Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary to Chandrakirti's text. So Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary is the illumination of the thought. So he discussed those cases where one bodhisattva is getting angry at another bodhisattva. And there is a mentioning of whether they need to don an armor for a certain duration. Now, what the donning of armor is not really explained clearly. Maybe, I mean, one guess is that they will have to do a certain counter practice, and that would be a donning, to don in armor. So there is a certain bodhisattva that has reached a high level of development, whereas from that point onward, they don't need to wear an armor, since that they don't need to protect themselves anymore from anger or from other things. Probably it is very unlikely that it will occur. Anyway, what it is, it's not very clear. So then it says that, well, what if a bodhisattva has reached that level where they don't need to wear an armor? Is there no effect to becoming angry? Well, they still say that things like, the attainment of the ground will be postponed and so forth. So there is an effect to anger, but it's not that each and every moment of anger kind of pushes us back. It has to be a specific one. And also it is said that there is nothing that the 4 powers of the antidote cannot purify. So don't get angry. Easy. Or not. Anyway, let's quickly just look at what we've discussed last week and then move on to what we have discussed today in Geshe-la's class. It was quite a thing. Some of the things were pretty complex. So I thought of saying a few words about them and then see where we end up. So in arresting the cause of anger, we say that we get angry. So the fuel of anger is an unhappy mind. It is either the cause of anger, or it is also when anger is already there, it is the fuel of anger, it keeps it burning. So you get unhappy when you do not get what you want, or when you get what you do not want. Right? Those are the 2 avenues of becoming unhappy. And first off, Shantideva explains being patient with those who would create suffering for you, which is part of arresting fury towards that which brings unwanted things, which means when you get what you don't want. So first off, we've completely covered cultivating the patience that accepts suffering, that willingly accepts suffering. So we said that in the previous week, the way to do that, which means to keep an unhappy mind at bay or try to minimize and at the end to avoid being unhappy, is to first of all recognize our samsaric situation. So long as we have the contaminated aggregates for that long, we will have suffering. So it is not unreasonable that we will experience difficulties and problems. So we tend to blame it on the outside, right? If we have a problem, if someone harms me, it's always their fault. It's never my fault. Later on, Shantideva says, well, who has created this body? I've created it because of my karma and afflictions. And since I've created this body, or this body was created because of my karma and afflictions, and this body is susceptible to harm because it is contaminated, it is under the control of karma and afflictions, then there's also some blame that I have to bear because my body is susceptible to suffering, it is susceptible to harm. Anyway, we will cover that later, but the point is that we understand that so long as we have something like that, we will not be protected from suffering. So it is not unthinkable that something like that would happen to us. So that's the first point.
So what is that? And then can you put that in about a few words rather than a few sentences?
Yeah, rather than going on and on. So it is not, so to practice patience that willingly accepts suffering, the first point that we think is that this body is samsara, and therefore it is not beyond suffering. All right. Second point is that there are benefits in meditating on suffering. If I learn to deal with small suffering, I'll be able to cope with greater suffering and so on and so forth. Actually, that will come later on. Then reflecting on the fact that if one is familiar with such attitudes, they are not difficult to implement. So it's all getting rid of that notion that it is impossible for me to tolerate suffering. I mean, it's particularly important, I think, in our cultures, our countries and so forth. It seems that we improve our lifestyles, our living conditions. Physically, we are removed from great degrees of discomfort. Of course, we get sick. We do experience hot and humid summers. That is still the case.
Only 84% humidity today.
Yeah. But comparing to other places, we're doing quite well. So, it is likely that that even small degree of discomfort will tip us over, right? So, so we gradually increase our ability to cope with suffering. Then also we meditate on the benefits the benefits of making effort in abandoning the afflictions, which are the causes of our suffering. And there was also an extensive explanation of the benefits of meditating on suffering, right? So suffering also has great advantages. You develop renunciation. You shun negative actions. You dispel haughtiness or pride. You develop compassion to sentient beings. Namazon Kappa, in his small text on how to take suffering onto the path, also says that you enhance your going for refuge. Right? You become more strong in your going for refuge and thinking that the only thing that can therefore protect me are the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So this is what we've discussed in the previous week, which is part of arresting fury towards those that give you what you don't want. Right? They're causing you harm. They're giving you what you do not want. They're taking things away from you. They impede with what you want to get, or what having all those different situations. You can practice patience that willingly accept suffering. So next is patience that is intent on the Dharma. Now, before we get into what we've covered today, just when you look at the outline, so the extensive explanation says, as both fury and the one who is furious, etc., rely upon causes, they are not independent. And the second point, refuting the existence of independent causes. The third is the need to overcome fury. So before we go into the meaning of the words or the verses and so forth, if you just try to think, what is the essence of patience that is intent on the Dharma? Right? If you think of the points that are made in the outline, what is patience? If you try to describe in 1 line, 2 lines, 4 lines, what is the nature of the practice of patience that is intent on the Dharma? We haven't really formulated a definition for that. We haven't really discussed the nature of that. So what do you do with patience that is intent on the Dharma in general? Sorry? Study.
Well, I guess a lot of it's about the different reasonings of emptiness or refuting those other schools.
So different reasons of emptiness, refuting other schools, generating wisdom.
Tolerating the difficulties, like it's hard.
Yeah.
And tolerating that it's not getting angry with yourself for not understanding all of that stuff.
Yeah, bearing with difficulties, tolerating it, not getting angry with yourself at difficulties and so forth, being patient with them. Putting the wisdom into practice. Yes, so I also when I thought about this section, I thought that it seems that patience that is intent on the Dharma, you approach things from a wisdom perspective, but also I think that You can also do it from the method perspective, and then we'll say it. Olaf is saying experiencing the benefits of the Dharma. Eva says, mind undisturbed in face of difficulties, challenges, which is similar to what you said. So I looked at Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chenmo that has just a small section on patience and certitude about the Dharma, being certain about the Dharma. But before we get to that, I wanted to jump to another section of the outline, section that we haven't covered, that also covers some part of patience of certitude about the Dharma. Maybe if we look at that, it can add something to our discussion. Just going to find it again. All right. Arresting fear towards those who wrong those did to yourself. So the reasons why it is unreasonable to be furious with those who cause harm to statues of Buddhas, etc. You know, so Buddhas and so forth cannot really be harmed. So why are you getting angry? Likewise, it is reasonable to be patient with those who cause harm to those due to oneself. We haven't really, I mean, it doesn't really tell you much, the outline. So at this point in time, let's look at Lama Tsongkhapa's explanation of patience of certitude about the Dharma. Just a second. This. All right. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, this section is not very clear, I have to say. I think that you have to think hard about what is developing the patience of certitude about the teachings. So it's volume 2. I didn't bring the volume book with me, so I can't tell you what the page number is. But it's in the chapter on patience. So it says, the patience of certitude about the teachings means generating the forbearance of conviction. So I think that's probably nails it. Generating the forbearance of conviction. Now, which means that you generate patience that is related to your conviction in the Dhamma.
So you're doing it from the wisdom side, it's the conviction in the view, the philosophical view.
Yeah.
So you're refuting other views or mistaken views or not quite clear views so that you get clearer.
So we will look at that soon, but I think that today we started to speak of the Samkhya's position, and I think that many of us are not totally clear about what they say. So I thought of also spending just a few minutes looking at what they say. But I think that, to put it simply, when we get angry at another person who is harming us, let's say that they're harming us because they're angry, we're perceiving the person as existing independently. Right? This is the way that they appear to us. They appear as if they exist independently, in and of themselves. So Shantideva says that, let's look at that appearance. Does the person have a sense of independence? They're harming you because they're angry. So they they lack that sense of independence. And also, anger itself doesn't exist independently. That also arises from cause and conditions. So in a way, he says that, look, it seems to me that what he says, that when we get angry and those appearances done to our mind, as if there's something that exists objectively out there and is out there to harm us. He says, let's look at those appearances and say that actually they're not correct. They're misleading you. The person does not have a sense of independence. So the harm is still there. But it says that you're reacting to that because you think that there is something objectively out there that is in terms of harming you, and that's not the case.
Also the sense of volition, as they say.
Yeah.
They're not thinking, or we don't think, I'm going to generate anger. It's not a conscious decision.
Yeah, it's not that we kind of kick back, kind of sit on a sofa or an armchair and say that the person has harmed me, so maybe I should just finish my tea and then get angry. No, we don't think like that.
t-shirt.
Yeah, finishing it is, yeah. Yeah, I was just going to grab an ice cream from the fridge and then I'm going to get angry.
You got that, so pretty good.
I think it's interesting though, like, I think, as Dharma, as ordained people who are dealing with the teachings every day in our own mind every day, and so, you know, there is a more of an acute awareness of what's going on within our mind, that, you know, we at times can just find anger manifests. Like,
Fine?
find anger manifests.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like, I mean, I've been experiencing this a bit myself lately. And it's as though my eye is, it's like a mosquito bite or a sore thumb. You know, like there's no real reason that I can really be objective about. And you know, I don't think this is uncommon. I think just because the fact I look at it, I can identify. And I think that's the way a lot of people can realise that, you know, that there's just the eye is a sore thumb, you know, or a mosquito bite. And, you know, what to do with that? What to do with that when you know that it's nothing outside, it's nothing inside, it's samsaric, you know, it's just the nature of, yeah, it's
I was just going to say, you're already doing something with that. You're identifying that you're seeing the nature of sense. I mean, you're describing what you're doing.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, I'm also just being mindful. You know, I think that's all you can be, is to be mindful and wait for it to change. You know, looking for that unborn awareness, knowing that it's impermanent and that it will change, but in the meantime, you're just a soul.
Well, the thing also is that when you read through this explanation, I think that sometimes it's easy to get that impression that there is a mechanism by which you get angry. Then you think that, what am I getting angry at? The person doesn't have a sense of independence, and simply thinking about it like that, bang, you're no longer angry. No, it's not going to happen like that. You know, it takes such a long time to think about it again and again and again, and not only again and again and again. You have that person. I mean, it's like that when you live in a community, right? So you live in a community and there's a person that pisses you off, you know, and they have the tendency, you know, there's the tendency to get angry with the person again and again. You know, it's like that in community. You always have someone that kind of rubs you the wrong way, and kind of you have that sometimes that initial contact, it doesn't go well, and then because of the previous experience with them, whenever you see them or whenever there is a slight situation that happens, you get angry with the person again. So when you think of this kind of patience, it will probably something that you need to develop, I think, over years to start to bring down that sense of getting annoyed with a person whenever it is you see them, or whenever there's something that is slight. It's not that kind of in one application of patience, anger will go away. No, it takes years.
That's the whole thing, that there's nothing that doesn't get easier
Yeah.
with familiarity, but it's not like we're familiar with anger since the beginning of this time. So it's like you do have to keep chipping away, but it comes back to also, you know, the four opponent powers, even you get angry, you know, just that application of the four opponent powers as quickly as you can.
I mean, I was still, you know, there were times, and probably still are times, where I'm getting angry at another person, and I can call to mind reasoning and it's a little bit kind of keep an open mind for something, or try to get rid of anger, but it's not the case that it immediately goes away. You know, it kind of over time it is being reduced. I think that being realistic, that's the way that it will work.
What I'm experiencing now is an objectless by anger. There's no object, either internal or external. And
Not that you identify.
yeah.
But is it when you say that this is what you experience? I mean, it'd be interesting to kind of to check it out, because I think that, I can relate to that. I think that sometimes I experience those days in which kind of just feel irritated. So no, it's not, no, I wouldn't say that it is anger, but it's just kind of irritation, to the point in which if I meet someone, I might vent.
Exactly. It could easily lead to anger or just, not being particularly
Yeah.
pleasant to be around.
And this is the mental, I think that this is the mental unhappiness that Shantideva is speaking about here.
Yeah, they do. But I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at the root of it, it doesn't take much when you're feeling like this to get annoyed.
Mm.
So, like you said, vent,
Yeah.
show a bit of anger. Yeah. But it does appear to be objectless. Although you're happy for something to come along
And be that object.
Exactly.
You just got in the way.
Yeah.
It's how it happens.
Spit the dummy. Something comes along and I spit the dummy.
Yeah, that's it.
No, I was just going to add to exactly what I was going to say. Sometimes it's not actually a person, it's something, and it's almost easier sometimes to be angry with people because you can actually have it out and resolve something and learn from it. But sometimes if you're angry at something and there's nothing, you're not going to, you just can't find a reason for being angry with the thing, and there's nothing that's going to fix. You just have to wait until it burns itself out, I think, sometimes.
But again, kind of, I would check in those situations, and also, I would say also with respect to myself, is it mental unhappiness, irritation, discomfort, and so forth, or is it anger? Because first of all, we want to be precise about what's happening inside so that we'll be able to identify it and apply an antidote to it. So we call it anger, but I think that that's irritation, mental unhappiness, discomfort, and so forth.
In English, I think we call anger the whole continuum.
Yeah.
Whereas this is saying specifically when it's manifest, when you are going to sit it down.
Yeah.
That's anger.
Yeah.
It's a lot more.
I mean, kind of, it happens to me, like during the summertime, sorry to kind of do it again and again, but during the summertime, I get irritated because I don't like the environment, so kind of I go out and my mind is irritated. And if I meet someone that says something that I don't agree with slightly, I tend to get angry. So that irritation is there, but no, it's still not anger. Still not anger. It's just kind of just discomfort, so this is what I need to kind of to address the sense of discomfort, like,
With that, what you were saying before too, sometimes I think we just get better at identifying it. We identify it at an earlier level, earlier point. So we can't really identify the object of anger because she can hear me.
That's her?
Yeah.
It's so cute. Mommy, come home.
Where are you? I think we just get better at identifying these things. And like you said, it's not really anger, it's just irritation, but we're picking it up earlier and going, oh, that's me getting angry and getting anxious about it. Whereas, yep, still there, still a bit of anxiety, a bit of just unhappiness, a bit of something in there, but I've identified it, now let's just move on.
I think that also what happens is that, you might get angry with another person. Now, suppose that I have a conversation with you, Dechen, then it doesn't go well. Then I'm already irritated or angry at you. I go down the road and I meet Yeshe. And because I got angry with you, I lash out at her. So that, there's that mental unhappiness that comes up with anger. And that mental unhappiness is also contributing to another moment of anger. It directed at something else, someone else. Yeah. So I apologize for that in advance.
So I was also thinking because, using the example of the, destroying eons of merit, when it's towards a bodhisattva or a bodhisattva towards a bodhisattva, so it's telling us that you're going to have this anger for a long time to come. It's basically saying that, isn't it? So it is about the forbearance of the rejection conviction
Yeah.
that the Dharma will work. It's not instantaneous. We're chipping away.
So there are different types of forbearances that Lama Tsongkhapa mentions. Forbearance of conviction, which means patience that comes from conviction in the Dharma. So object of faith, this is the good qualities of the three jewels, which means that it seems that when I interpret that, because Lama Tsongkhapa does not elaborate on that, it seems to me that when you have faith in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, by knowing the good qualities of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and you come across someone who is harming you, you think that, for example, I should not harm that person because I've gone for refuge in the Dhamma. When I go for refuge in the Dhamma, I should abstain from harming other sentient beings. Right? So maybe that's one way of interpreting that. Then the object to be actualized, this is the reality of the two selflessnesses. So it seems that what Lama Tsongkhapa says, what Shantideva says in the section that we've covered today is related to the object to be actualized, the two types of selflessnesses. Then the desired object, this is the great powers of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, of which there are three: the power of the super knowledges, the power of the six perfections, and the power of which is innate.
I don't understand that at all. What does that mean?
Well,
Desire.
maybe it says that kind of I should develop the forbearance of related to conviction in the paths of the Buddha. So I'm experiencing now a situation in which someone is harming me. Interesting that the Buddha has clairvoyance. Maybe one way of understanding that is that the Buddha knows that now I'm angry. The Buddha has clairvoyance that knows my mind. The Buddha also has clairvoyance that knows the result of actions, so the maturation of actions and so forth. So having conviction in that, I should abstain from giving way to anger and harming others. It depends upon that. Maybe that could be one way of dealing with that. Any other possible explanations?
There's one we're looking at, 3.
Yeah, 3. So the one that says the desired object, this is the great powers of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, of which there are 3: the power of super knowledges, the power of the six perfections, and the power which is innate.
So you sort of describe them as though they are qualities of the Buddha, not qualities that we will one day, as a Buddha, have ourselves. So we're striving for these desired powers.
Well, what I said was just a guess. It's not I know that for sure, because as I said, Lama Tsongkhapa just gives a list, but it doesn't explain how you actually put it.
Sort of saying
Yeah.
another.
You could look at it like that.
Yeah.
Because it's saying these are the powers of Buddha and Bodhisattva. We're on the Bodhisattva path. Well, not aspiring to the Bodhisattva path. So then, and so these are the attainments that.
Oh, yeah.
But see, the super knowledges, like you said, there's clairvoyances. I mean, I just thought it's wisdom and like the six perfections, wisdom and bodhicitta. So it's a combination of the two.
But I take your point, Dechen. Maybe you can say that also. When I become a Buddha, or when I'm a Bodhisattva, this is what I'll do, for example, with the practice of the perfection of patience.
Yeah.
This is what I need to be doing. This is my goal, to put into practice the perfection of patience, to attain a perfected patience. So I will not get angry, give way to anger and act upon anger, because this is my desired object, the six perfections.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that word innate, like we have to go through this great explanation to ourselves to convince ourselves not to get angry, whereas for a Bodhisattva Buddha, they don't have to go through that process of thinking that it's just an innate, spontaneous, non-anger.
So in this list are some more objects of patience, of certitude about the Dhamma, but we don't have the time to look into all of them, because I also wanted to go back and cover what we did today. So we have the object of meditation, the object of meditation, that is the method of achieving the goal, the object of subsequent practice through study and reflection. So maybe it's good the object to be adopted. I don't think that we read through that. Anyway, it's good to just keep in mind that here we have in Shantidevas, why we're speaking about that, because we are looking now at a section of cultivating the patience that is intent on the Dhamma. So here we have examining whether the object of our anger exists independently and whether the causes that produce the object of our anger, whether they also exist independently. So this is just a subset of a bigger topic of patience of certitude about the Dhamma. And it seems that the way that Lama Tsongkhapa explains that is kind of more full, yeah. Yeah, lots of points, which has to do with maintaining kind of a stable mind, which is certain about the Dhamma. So if you're certain about the Dhamma, you know what you should do and what you should avoid. So I just wanted to cover, what I wanted to do now is to start to look at refuting independent self and principle of the Samkhya's. But actually, let's just briefly go through those 2 points that we've covered today, and also in the previous week. Actually, in the previous week, we covered verses 22 and 23, the reason why it is unreasonable to be furious with an afflicted person. So again, it's that notion that they have a sense of independence in harming us. As I do not become angry at great source of suffering, such as bad disease, then why be angry those with mine? These two are provoked by conditions. For example, although they are not wished for, the sicknesses arise. Likewise, although they are not wished for, these afflictions forcibly arise. That's what we've covered in the previous week. A person that is afflicted does not have independence because the afflictions they don't have independence, and also the afflictions don't have independence. So today we've covered verse 24 and 25 in that section. Let's go through that quickly. Without thinking I shall be angry, people become angry with no resistance. We just mentioned that today, right? No, it's a rational, totally rational process that we go through. It just arises, conditioned by certain things. And also anger itself, without thinking I shall produce or shall be produced. Anger itself is produced. All misdeeds there are, and all the various kinds of negativities arise through the force of conditions. They do not have self-power. So it's the process that Geshe described today. Because of ignorance, our mind is made unhappy in a certain situation. From mental unhappiness, anger arises. It causes us to do certain things, a variety of actions that result in suffering. So, suddenly I saw just a pair of legs. Oh. Hi. How are you? It's okay. Okay, see, it's okay. Suddenly I saw a pair of legs. It was just funny, kind of pairs of legs and no body. Anyway, so the whole process is enacted by cause and condition. So why get angry with something that lacks independence? So this is what we've covered today. I think that's pretty pretty easy, or I think I wouldn't say simple, pretty clear. All right, what's the deal with the Samkhya's? Let's look at that. So Geshe will cover that tomorrow, refuting that the principle generates independent expressions and refuting that an aware being autonomously experiences objects. This is refuting the independent self and principle of the Samkhya. So what I thought of doing now is just to give a few details about what the Samkhyas assert. Geshe will speak about it tomorrow. So it's good to just hear some of the terms to be able to link up with Geshe's explanation tomorrow. So to begin with, as Geshe said, it is a non-Buddhist school of thought. Shantideva addressed that when it was at Nalanda Monastery, so there were probably some Samkhyas around, and it was a position that more people understood, right? So for us, sometimes it is quite vague. The terminology that is used is completely new to us. You might be thinking, who anyway thinks about it like that? But it's good to, I think, it's still valuable to look at that position and say that even if we don't necessarily think about it in the same way that the Samkhya school thinks about it, still there are similarities in the way that we perceive other people in a particular way, as if they are independent, and independently they are intent on harming us. So in order to understand what Shantideva is saying here, let's look at what the Samkhya school says. Now, in the tutorial notes, which I will upload today to the Dropbox, I pasted a summary taken from Kunchok Jigme Wampo's tenets text, which there's Kunchok Jigme Wampo's tenets text was translated into Cutting Through Appearances, as far as I remember, right? So there is a book in English called Cutting Through Appearances, and there is there's Kunchok Jigme Wampo's text, including, I think, Jeffrey Hopkins' annotation to that text. So with that, and also together with another tenets text that was composed by Chankya Ronpo Dorje, I gathered some information about the Samkhyas. So the Samkhyas in English are called the enumerator. They take everything that exists and classify it into 25 groups. Since they enumerate things into 25 groups, they're called the enumerators. That's the meaning of the term Samkhyas. So what are they saying? They say that amongst those 25 groups, there are things which are causes, but they are not effects. Do we accept that something can be a cause, but not an effect? No. For us, for Buddhists, if it's a cause, it's necessarily an effect. So the Samkhyas, however, say that there's something that is a cause, which means that it's a source, but it is not an effect. In some sense, I think that you could say that maybe it's similar to theistic religions. You know, when the Buddha was alive, when Shantideva was alive, it wasn't dealing with Christianity or Islam or Judaism, right? So it wasn't dealing with those theistic religions. But let's say that if you believe in God, a creator God, so you have a God, which is a cause, but a God is not a result, is he? Or is it? Is she? Right, so...
It's there in Hinduism.
Sorry?
In Hinduism, they have a concept of God.
Yeah, in some forms of Hinduism.
Something.
Yeah.
So they would have had it in the environment.
Well, in some Hindu traditions, they do speak about creators, right? So there's the kind of those three. In some forms of Hinduism, you have Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. You know, one of them is the creator, one of the destroyer, and one of them is the sustainer or maintainer. Anyway, here the Samkhyas don't speak about a creator God. They say that there's something that is called the general principle. Now, the general principle is a cause, but it is not an effect. Now, what they say is that you have this particular nature that pervades everything around us, right? So this cup, my robes, this table, and so forth. All of them have a particular nature. So this nature, which is called the principle, is something that pervades all of them. Everything has that nature. Everything actually is a manifestation of that nature. So you have a permanent cause, this nature, and everything else is a manifestation of that. It's an expression of that nature. This is what they say. It sounds pretty vague and awkward. It's not a random belief. They do have the reasons for asserting that. So when you study depth tenets in depth, or when you look at, for example, Chandrakirti's supplement to the middle way together with the illumination of the thought, you come across the reasons why they do believe that something like that exists, and it's not far-fetched. You know, they do. It sounds. You can say that it sounds quite logical. Anyway, of course, you can find faults within that logic. So they say there is that permanent cause, the principle, and there is a person, me. So I have different desires, different wishes, and through those desires, wishes, and so forth, things are created. So they're created in having the nature of that general principle and because of my wishes. So this is their positions. Now, Shantideva says that when you're getting angry at someone that is harming you, what is your perception of that person? Sorry? Exaggerated. You're perceiving someone that is an independent person. There's also, you're perceiving them with some sense of, you know, this concrete entity, stable entity, unchanging entity, and so forth. So you can come in if you want. So Shantideva says, let's address that from the viewpoint of the Samkhyas, right? So I'm just going to look again at those notes. It says, so you have something that is called the principle. It is the agent of actions. It is unproduced. It is permanent. It is unitary in that it is not divisible. It is only an object, not an object possessor. It pervades all animate and inanimate objects. It is not manifest, blah, blah, blah. It gives you that idea that they speak about this nature that pervades everything, at motion and in rest. It is permanent. It is indivisible. Everything has that nature. Then there's also the person belongs to a group that is neither a cause nor an effect. That person has different names: self, consciousness, conscious self, mind, sentient, knower of the field. So the person is consciousness. The person is not an aggregation of particles. So according to Lama Tsongkhapa in his illumination of the thought, that person, according to the Samkhya, is a consumer that enjoys happiness and suffering. A person is permanent. A person is not a creator of transformation. The creator of transformation is the principle, that nature. From the nature, everything arises. It lacks qualities and lacks activity because pervading all migrators. It's pretty it sounds pretty vague, doesn't it?
Well, especially a permanent thing.
Yeah, that's what the Samkhyas assert. Yeah. Yeah.
But then they're referring to Lama Tsongkhapa saying the five qualities and that permanent thing, or is that just the way it is?
No, so Lama Tsongkhapa in the illumination of the thoughts, he explains Chandrakirti's text. Now, Chandrakirti's text refutes the self as asserted by the Samkhyas. So in order to understand how the refutation of the self that is asserted by the Samkhya works, you have to explain what it is. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, according to the Samkhyas, the self that they assert has those five qualities: being permanent, being unitary, being all-pervasive, lacking activity. So anyway, there's more more information about it in the class notes that I pasted. Let's just go through the last section. It says, according to the Samkhya's, so they speak about samsara, but what do they say? One cycles in samsara through the force of ignorance that mistakes the fundamental nature, right? So the nature that exists for cup and glass and water and mountains and so forth, everything has that principal nature. Everything is a manifestation, expression of that fundamental nature. So through the force of ignorance that mistakes the fundamental nature, which is like a blind man with good legs, and the person which is like a cripple with good eyesight. So yeah, they come together because a person wants something, a person wishes for something, and then because of the nature, that expression comes into being. So the principle cannot create because it wants to. The person wants something, and because of the nature, the principle, it comes into being. So you can say that the principle has legs, but it's like a blind person. It doesn't know where to go. A person has wishes, but a person cannot create things out of themselves. They have to be created from that nature. So due to this too, the wishes of that person, right? So the person and the general principle, things come to be. So because of ignorance that mistakes the fundamental nature to and the person which knows the fundamental nature, which is like a blind man with good legs, and the person which is like a cripple with good eyesight, to be one, right? So ignorance perceives the nature and the person to be the same thing, right? As if the person is the creator and not the principle. The person doesn't understand that transformations are manifested by the fundamental nature. So when you realize that the transformations are only manifestations of the fundamental nature, attachment to object abates. At that time, that's quite nice. When the divine eye is generated through concentrations, the fundamental nature is seen by it and withdraws like a mistress that is flushed with shame when seen by the wife. Yeah, it's that's pretty nice, I thought. It can be random, but I thought it's pretty you can imagine the scene. The fundamental nature dwells alone, separate from the self, which is the result that all appearances of conventional phenomena disappear from the mind of the yogi, which means that since they understand that the fundamental nature and the person are not the same, they're different, they do no longer have that sense of attachment to manifestations. And therefore, the person then abides without enjoying objects and without action. And at that time, liberation is attained. So that's their idea. What it is in general is, I think, still vague, vague to us. But why are we looking at that? Because, sorry, I don't need this. Because cultivating patience that is intent on the Dharma. So it's both fury and the one who is furious rely upon causes that are not independent. We've covered that actually, sorry. Refuting the existence of independent causes. So we say that as both fury and the one is furious are not independent, it doesn't make sense to get angry at them. What about the causes for anger? What about the causes for that person? What about causes in general? Are they independent or not independent? So refuting the existence of independent causes begins with refuting the independent self and the principle of the Samkhya's. It's already 4 o'clock, so let's just look at the first 6 lines just to see what it says.
I've got this storyline going on in my head that the Samkhya's and these ones are the ones that were giving Shantideva a hard time. Yeah, the ones that
Could be.
That's right.
But he was at Nalanda, so they were probably not at Nalanda.
I think that, I'm not sure, but I think that Nalanda was such a big university once upon a time, and it contained not only Buddhist scholars, but also those who were studying medicine and astrology and poetry. And I guess that also they had a Samkhya college.
They don't exist anymore, do they?
Sorry?
They're not around anymore.
Maybe they are still in India. I have to ask Madhu, although Madhu will probably say, I don't know. So if they are not produced and non-existent, what is asserted to be produced at that time? Since it would, since it would always be distracted to its object, it follows that it will never cease. If the self were permanent, it would obviously be devoid of activity, just like space. So these 6 lines are refuting the self as asserted by the Samkhyas. So since it's already 4 o'clock, maybe we'll leave it here for now. We'll listen to Geshe-la's explanation of that section tomorrow. Actually, I should have read verse 27 and I read verse 28. So erase what I've just read. I should have read that. That which is asserted to be the principle and that which is imputed as self do not arise after having purposefully thought, but shall arise. If they are not produced and non-existent, what is asserted to be produced at that time? So altogether, I think that what we should be thinking about it is that we have that appearance of an independent self that appears to us. If that self was independent, permanent, unproduced, and so forth, there would be problems. Anyway, still late to get into a greater discussion about it, and I'm not sure that I'm going with that in the right direction. So it's better to wait for Geshe-la tomorrow to say what he has to say with respect to that, and then we can see if we can get some more clarity. That's a way of kind of averting dangers. Yeah. The spiritual man quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all transmigrated beings without exception to that state. May the precious Supreme Bodhisattva not yet born arise and might climb but increase more and more. Encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remember the samsara. You uphold the subdued moral code, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent praise, honoring the 3 jewels, protector of myself and other societies. Please live long. On what? Who upholds. Okay. Hey, I read a couple of days ago a piece about a bird sanctuary in the UK. So they have about 11,000 grey parrots living in the UK in general. Sorry? Yeah, African grey. No, which are very good in talking. So people surrendered the parrots to that bird sanctuary, and they had in 1 week 5 African grey that arrived at that thing, and they put them together, and they found out that when they're together, they encourage each other to swear. And they had to separate them because they were swearing all the time.
It was embarrassing.
Yeah, it was embarrassing.
Yes.
So I just thought of my track. Can she swear?
No.
Oh. Because I thought we might have to separate between the 2 of you. Sorry?
Because she didn't learn it from her.
Oh, yeah.
She can cough and sneeze.
Yeah.
Really?
She coughs.
Cough and sneeze.
She's emanating.
That's cute.
Emulating human noises.
What else can she do?
She says, good night, girls, because every afternoon later, like this time of the afternoon, I would give them their treats and, or, a bit later than this, give them their treats and put them to bed and say, good night, girls. And so she starts at about 3 o'clock. Good night, girls, good night, girls, good
In
night,
other words,
girls.
I want a treat.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
She used to say, hello, darling, 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 but she doesn't say that anymore.
Do you say it?
I do, I don't do that, quite so many darlings.
Yeah, maybe you stop.
There was an active discussion happening, so I was just was wondering if there's anything I need to speak. No, nothing.
What do
All
you
right.
think about that comment that Olivia made about the way you manage anger in the different
Vehicles.
Something like
It also depends on which vehicle the person is on, lesser, middle, or greater. The person in each of these vehicles will express and handle anger in different ways. Is this close to correct? Not sure.
The result would be different in each vehicle because the motivation is different.
I think I probably would say that if you're strongly motivated by compassion and bodhicitta, maybe you have a better force in. Over time,
give you more power.
yeah. Over time, your ability to vanquish anger will get stronger and stronger.
With the higher,
With greater
higher
motivation.
Mm.
Yeah, yes, so the result would be different.
Yeah.
But the practice would probably is similar, would be quite similar.
Yeah, I would say so.